Greetings and salutations and welcome to Lost in Video. If you enjoy the video that you're about to see, please hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Speaking of the video, this is my first project on this channel, and I figured I'd start with something just kind of light and fun. So for the month of October 2022, I decided that I'd watch one movie for each of the 31 days of October, and those would all be, of course, movies befitting the month of October and Halloween, specifically. So I didn't rank these movies, I just watched random Halloween-type movies in random order, and all I'm going to be telling you are the bare bones about the movies and whether or not I recommend them. So I hope you might find something new here that you've never seen before that you might want to check out, or if anything else, hopefully you just enjoy the randomness of the list. So let's just get right into it, and I'll see you guys at the end of the video. Number 1, Creepshow 2. If you're into fun, campy anthology films, the only thing you need to know is that this sequel comes nowhere close to reaching the awesomeness of Creepshow 1, but if you can deal with that, it's still a fun ride. In this anthology, we see 3 stories play out. One involves a wooden Native American statue that gets a bit agitated with some no-good troublemakers. Another one is about 4 teenagers trapped on a raft on a lake, and there's an evil, mysterious blob in the water going after them. And the final story is about a lady who gets herself in a bit of a pickle with a mysterious hitchhiker. I don't personally care for any of these stories individually, but presented as an anthology, it was fun enough for me to recommend, as long as you don't expect anything near the quality of the first Creepshow movie, because it doesn't come close. Number 2, John Carpenter's Body Bags. John Carpenter brings us another anthology movie that originally aired on Showtime. It's got a nice cast, including the likes of Mark Hamill and Stacy Keach, who are always a joy to watch, and even including cameos from Wes Craven and Sam Raimi. This one's campy as well, but you get John Carpenter himself playing the narrator, a spooky coroner with a morbid sense of humor. It's no masterpiece, but it's fun, and it's definitely better than Creepshow 2, at least in my opinion. So if you're trying to decide what to watch first between those two movies, definitely go with Body Bags. All 3 stories are pretty different in tone, which makes for a fun experience that I don't want to spoil. High recommendation here if you like anthology movies. Number 3, Xtro. After hearing some of the hype surrounding this 1982 gem, I finally got a chance to watch it, and this movie did not disappoint. It's got great practical effects, it's very bizarre, and there's at least one scene that will always stand out to me. It's very horrific and weird, although there is tons of weirdness in this film, and a lot of it will probably be burned into my head forever. If any of that sounds good to you, check out Xtro. Number 4, Re-Animator. It is very embarrassing for me to admit that I only now just saw this classic, but man, was it a treat to watch. It's messed up. Again, the practical effects are a lot of fun, way better than those in Xtro, although those guys did the best with what they had. And I just adore the fact that so much effort and hard work was put into making a movie as insane as this. It's everything I ever wanted it to be. It's just a bizarre movie about reanimating corpses and how that might not turn out well, but our main characters don't care, and the results are a bit messy. I'd recommend this to any horror fan, purely based on the fact that it's a classic. Number 5, The House of the Devil. An impressive directorial effort from Ty West, The House of the Devil is wild. The filmmakers, specifically West himself, put a lot of effort into making this movie really feel like something out of the early 80s, and they pull it off without a hitch. It's not the most original plot. A babysitter is hired to watch over an elderly lady for the night. Everything about the scenario is creepy, and well, it's a horror movie, so bad stuff happens after that. I really enjoyed this one, and I highly recommend it. Number 6, Dead and Buried. This gem from 1981 helped to kick off the 80s in a fun yet gruesome way. It basically follows a town sheriff as he investigates a series of gruesome murders in a small town. There's some fun mystery to it, a few twists and turns, and it's just a fun ride. If you're into 80s horror movies that might have a surprise or two in store for you along the way, you might want to give this one a shot. I have to recommend it. Number 7. Halloween Ends. And now, we take a brief break from anthologies and 80s horror, coming back to present day of 2022 with Halloween Ends, the final chapter in the epic saga of Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. Sorta, cause Michael's barely even in the movie, even though people pay good money to see Michael Myers in a Halloween movie and not Laurie Strode. I watched it and I don't want to talk about it. Back to the 80s we go. Number 8. Hobgoblins. The year was 1988, and a visionary director named Nick Sloan decided to take a stand and say, to hell with the gremlins, to hell with critters. I'm gonna be the one to get the creepy, evil little monster movie right. So this movie has two guys banging rakes together for what feels like 3 hours, and later on, crew members off camera throw puppets at the actors. I was hoping this might be so bad it's funny, but aside from a few moments, it wasn't. I couldn't live with myself if I gave this one a recommendation, but if you want to be a hero, I guess you can find it somewhere and watch at your own risk. Number 9. Deep Red. A friend of mine recommended this one to me, and actually he's recommended me Dead, Been Buried, and House of the Devil, as well as a few other flicks on this list that we haven't gotten to quite yet. So this is a Dario Argento film from 1975, and wow. Ever since I saw Suspiria, I knew this guy was talented, and seeing more of his films has been a pleasure. This one revolves around a jazz musician and a reporter who begin to investigate a murder. This is easily Argento's best, or at least second best film that I have seen so far, at the very top tier along with Suspiria. To be fair, I still have more Argento films to check out, but this one was a pleasure to see, and it'll be a hard one to top. Absolutely recommend. Number 10. Stephen King's Cat's Eye. And we're back to anthologies. This time it's the acclaimed author Stephen King taking a stab at it. This one is fun. It's got 3 stories, as they usually tend to. In one, the enigma that is James Woods is desperate to quit smoking. In another, a man who is tangled in a risky affair takes a dangerous bet. And in the third story, there's an evil little troll trying to kill a 10-year-old Drew Barrymore while she's asleep, and the protagonist of that story is a cat. It's nothing that will blow you away, but I found it to be a fun little trip. If you haven't noticed, I do enjoy horror anthology movies, at least when they're fun. Gotta recommend this one. Number 11. Communion. First of all, I must confess that this is the first entry on the list that I have previously seen before, but at least in this case, I didn't remember much going back into it. Okay, so this 1989 oddball of a movie is honestly more sci-fi and drama than it is horror, but I would argue it absolutely has horror aspects that justify including it on my list. It's based on an allegedly non-fictional book written by Whitley Schreiber, an account of his experience being abducted by aliens. Like, yeah, whatever, you liar, but what really sells this movie is Christopher Walken playing the lead role. He gets abducted by aliens, that part is awesome, and then things sort of grow dull when we follow him as he struggles to cope with the trauma of his experience. You have to pretend that the movie isn't based on a lie in order to experience it the way the filmmakers intended, but since it's Christopher Walken, it becomes very easy to separate this movie from real life. I don't recommend it unless you just want to see Christopher Walken do his thing, but the scenes with the aliens were cool. Number 12. A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Despite its popularity, I never considered myself a big Nightmare on Elm Street fan. I'd seen 3 movies from the franchise over the years, and I actually loved all 3 from what I could remember, but I never really gave the franchise the full attention it deserved. I've heard people call Nightmare 2 the worst of the series, although I won't have my own opinion until I've, actually seen all the films. But going into this one expecting the worst, I can say I didn't think it was that bad. It's a little weird, but it's a Freddy Krueger movie at the end of the day. It absolutely is my least favorite from the ones I've seen so far, so I can't give it a glowing recommendation, but if you're curious about the Nightmare franchise, I say check it out once you've seen part 1, and just get through it so you can move on to the third movie. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Number 13, Stage Fright. This is another one I checked out based on a recommendation from a friend, and I have to say, we've got another gem on our hands with this one too. Released in 1987, Stage Fright is a slasher following the cast of a play about a real-life serial killer. Naturally, they get locked in the theater at night after the discovery of a brutal murder. Could it be the very same killer that their play is based on? Who gets picked off by the killer and who survives? Who is the killer? These are all questions that will be answered if you watch this movie, so don't even worry about that. Just know that the killer wears an owl mask that was originally meant to be used in the play, and it is awesome. Also, this movie has one specific shot that is just absolutely pure art. I would probably recommend this one just for that alone, even if the rest of the film were unwatchable. Turns out that's not the case though, as it's a pretty entertaining ride from start to finish. Definitely check this one out if you're into slashers. Number 14, Halloween 4. Oh, the Halloween franchise. Like Communion, this entry on the list is another one I've already seen before. Unlike Communion, I probably watched this movie at least 10 times because Halloween was my favorite horror franchise growing up, so I had a very clear memory of this one going in. I feel like everyone knows the Halloween movies, so you get the idea. Guy who doesn't talk and wears a mask starts causing a bit of a ruckus, usually near his home in the fictional town of Haddonfield, Illinois. Anyways, I like this one. I recommend you check it out if you haven't seen it, then go get yourself a copy of Halloween 5 and burn it. Number 15, Hideaway. So, I sort of randomly stumbled upon this one, and I just couldn't resist the temptation to check it out. Hideaway is a horror thriller. Honestly, to me, it's just more of a thriller, but again, I'm playing it loose with the rules on this. So this movie stars the Jeff Goldblum as our protagonist, a loving husband who dies in a car accident only to be brought back to life, but now he's able to see through the eyes of a satanic serial killer, and the killer gets to live everyone's dream by taking a peek through the eyes of Jeff Goldblum as well. Obviously, these two are gonna deck it out in the end, so let's not kid ourselves. Jeff Goldblum is so weird in this, and there are some special effects that are so bad and weird that I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. So weird. Absolutely recommend to anyone, even people who don't like movies, because Goldblum's performance transcends film. Number 16, Phenomena. Dario Argento makes his way back onto the list with, well, a Dario Argento movie. Phenomena, starring Jennifer Connelly and one of my favorites, Donald Pleasence. I'm torn on what to say about this movie, but I've decided I'll lay out a few basic plot points. Jennifer Connelly can talk to insects, Donald Pleasence is really into insects and biology and stuff, and there's a serial killer just killing people at a school. Not the first time Argento has used this type of backdrop, am I right? In my opinion, this isn't his best movie, but it is still very awesome. I personally love it, and one of the best characters is a monkey. I'm not joking, this monkey is amazing, one of the best actors of any type of animal I've ever seen on screen, so I definitely recommend this bizarre movie. Number 17, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Joining the sub-list of films I've previously seen is A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. This is actually the first Nightmare film I ever saw as a kid, and I loved some of the cartoonish aspects. It didn't mentally scar me the way other horror films I'd seen at that point had, but at the same time, it still left a deep impression. I love this movie, and it makes me hyped to check out the entire Nightmare franchise in full. Number 18, Phantasm. So, I've said already, this is just some guy's opinion, but after having heard about this movie for at least a decade, maybe more, and after failing time and time again to find myself a copy of this movie to watch, I finally got to it this year, and, well, I think I just built it up in my head too much, and I've seen a lot of other movies on this list already that play into similar ideas, so this one just didn't do it for me. I don't not recommend it, but it's just a movie I need to revisit again because I know it's a classic adored by many, and I don't want to diss it. Number 19, Terrifier 2. Back to 2022 with Terrifier 2. Since this is a new release, I'm going to keep it relatively short, but if you've seen Terrifier and you liked what you saw, this one is definitely going to scratch your itch. It's very, very brutal and gory. Art the Clown is a playful, kind-hearted little rascal as we continue to see, and yes, sometimes his enthusiasm for theatrics goes a bit too far. This is the first Terrifier movie on some steroids, so I do recommend that if it sounds good to you, or if you like the more gory Saw movies, you might like this as well. Anything like that. Number 20, A Nightmare on Elm Street 5. Here we are with another Nightmare on Elm Street film, this time the 5th entry in the series, The Dream Child. Now, oddly, I did not watch A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 this year, and in fact, I'm not sure I've ever seen it. So there are obviously pieces to the story that I was missing going into this one, but at the end of the day, it's a Freddy Krueger movie, and the third one we've seen on this list. I will say I didn't enjoy this one as much as I enjoyed Dream Warriors, but I liked it more than Nightmare 2. Once again, if you're a fan of the Freddy Krueger franchise, or, unique and weird, twisted, gory / death scenes, I can recommend this one to you with confidence. Number 21, Poltergeist 2. Okay, I know what you may be thinking. There are a lot of sequels on this list that aren't accompanied by their original counterparts. That's the nature of this game, though. For example, I've seen Poltergeist. What I haven't seen in whole, though, is Poltergeist 2, which is a terrible movie. However, what is not terrible was the performance of Julian Beck. I saw part of this movie on TV as a kid, and all I remember is Reverend Kane's evil, demonic, but tortured face. Turns out the actor Julian Beck was dying of cancer while shooting this movie. His performance alone makes this worth watching, and made me a fan of Julian Beck, a man who led a fascinating life. Definitely recommend. Number 22, The Box. Because I'm working on another video about another movie directed by Richard Kelly, I was morbidly curious to check out The Box starring Cameron Diaz and James Marsden. I really went into this one with an open mind because at the end of the day, like every Richard Kelly movie I've ever seen, and there aren't many because he hasn't made many, this one actually does turn out to feel like an overly ambitious film with a lot of interesting ideas that are just sort of thrown at you, demanding more from the audience than the movie itself is willing to give it back. I don't recommend it. I actually kind of hated it, and the only horrific aspect of this movie to me is the wasted potential from a director and cast that I otherwise actually enjoy. Number 23, Barbarian. Jumping back to 2022, we have Barbarian. With this one, I really do want to say as little as possible. Go into this one blind and hopefully you will love it as much as I did. I hate to make this entry so short because I love this movie so much, but it's a very interesting movie that I just can't find it in my heart to spill any details about, other than it caught me off guard completely. I loved all the performances, and I highly recommend. Number 24, Pearl. Talk about a good horror movie, we stay in 2022 for this one. If you've ever seen X, which is the first movie in this horror universe, this is an amazing, amazing prequel. Maya Goth deserves an Academy Award in my opinion. The score is impressive, and we've talked about the directorial efforts of Ty West before on this list, so it should come as no surprise that he was the man to helm this one. He also directed X for the record, as I believe he has said he plans this as a trilogy. So on top of recommending Pearl, I would also recommend X, which is a lot of fun but a very different style than this, if only because they're part of a planned trilogy of connected movies. Number 25, Frankenstein 1931. It's alive. It's alive. I mean, what can I say about this one? Oh, I can say it's a lot shorter than most feature films we've grown to see today. I can tell you, if you know the name Boris Karloff, then you will know that his role as Frankenstein's monster in this film is the reason from 1931 until 2022 you'll still hear the man's name. Very simplistic for its time, masterful production given the resources they had, and this is just an absolute classic. What can I say? I recommend this to any film buff. Number 26, Smile. I'm gonna be honest, when I first saw the trailer to this one, I thought it was gonna be one of those wish upon type movies. Another sad failure to attempt horror, something that you'd find more joy in laughing at or, dare I say, smiling at. However, this movie is messed up. It's a lot more interesting than I expected, and I think there's a lot to be said for execution over concept when it comes to this one. I think in the hands of anyone else, this could have been at best lame and at the worst hilarious for all the wrong reasons. Turns out it's one of the most successful movies of 2022. Why is that? Because it's a good movie. Recommend. Number 27, House. Next on the list comes from the year 1986 with House, directed by Steve Miner. This is another weird one, but trust me, it's a lot of fun. It's very much a haunted house movie where our hero, Roger Cobb, played by William Catt, inherits a house from his late aunt who died by suicide. Turns out the house might have had something to do with it, and so proceeds a fun, campy horror movie with entertaining practical effects. I highly recommend this to fans of 80s horror, and, to me and many others, it's definitely a classic, even though I keep using that word. Number 28, Hellraiser 2022. I know this is going to sound unpopular with a lot of horror fans, but I'm not the biggest fan of the Hellraiser franchise. Now, it's not that I don't like the movies, it's just that it's been close to, if not a decade, since I watched the first two movies, and I just never revisited them. I'm sure I'll revisit them again in the future, but for now, I didn't see any harm in checking out Hellraiser 2022. It's basically a reboot of the franchise, and you know what? I liked it. It wasn't my favorite movie of the year, but I did enjoy it. If you're a fan of the Hellraiser franchise, you'll probably like this, as well as any fans of generally gory movies like Saw. For those folks, this is a recommendation. Number 29, The Shining. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. This is most likely my favorite horror movie of all time, to the point where I watch it not only every October, but, at random times throughout the year, because sometimes I'm just in the mood to watch Jack Torrance lose his mind and, try to kill his family with an axe. Obviously, I'm oversimplifying the movie, but the fact that this was crafted by the great Stanley Kubrick is probably the reason that it's so great to me. This is as close to a perfect horror movie as it can get for me personally, and so of course I recommend this one to literally anybody and everybody. Number 30, The Omen 3. Once again, we go back to a random sequel in an older horror franchise. I love the first three Omen movies, but out of those three, The Omen 3 is easily the weakest of the three. It stars Sam Neill, who I love, as the Antichrist Damien, now rising to his own massive political aspirations while running a massive company that seems to be monopolizing all of the world's resources so as to gain control over humanity as a whole. Aside from Sam Neill's performance, this one just didn't really entertain me. I like what they're going for, the idea, but it was missing the magic of the first two movies, as well as the creepy factor that made those movies scary in the first place. I only recommend this if you've already seen the first two Omen movies and want to finish off the trilogy and see how the story ends. Number 31, A Disney Halloween Treat. I know this probably wasn't a theatrical release, and I didn't look it up because I don't care. A Disney Halloween Treat is awesome. It's a collection of animated shorts and clips from various Disney cartoons, and they're all spooky. And by spooky, I mean they're just cheesy and fun. A lot of spooky songs to animated dancing skeletons, stuff like that. There's not a ton of detail to go into for this. I just remember absolutely loving this as a kid, and randomly rediscovering it this year was indeed a treat. I recommend to people who saw this growing up as kids, or people who like Disney stuff, and and people with kids, because your kids might enjoy it. It's just a fun Halloween time. Okay, well that just about wraps up the video. That completes the list. I hope you guys had fun with me on this journey through October of 2022. I'll probably be doing this next year, at least I hope to be doing that. And I also have two new projects that I'm already working on. I'm not going to be sure about when they're coming out, but they will be coming out because I really enjoyed doing this project and I look forward to doing more in the future. I appreciate you for stopping by and for checking me out and checking out the video, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.